For our first actual episode here, we're going to play the conversation that Kurt and I recorded the other day. Things are a little rough here at the start, so while we're trying to get our schedules worked out, but please be patient with us. Anyway, we want you to join us in the conversation. So in the description below, you'll find our email address. It's thingsyoudon'ttalkabout@gmail.com. There's also a link to our Facebook group. It's a closed group, but you just got to ask to get in. We're just keeping it closed, so that way you can follow the rules or you're out, because again, we want to have a civil conversation here. That's what we want to do, and if people aren't doing that, they won't be part of the conversation. But anyway, thank you for listening, and here it is. Thanks. Okay, so what I had asked you about, if you remember, was what you thought about this, whether you agreed or disagreed with this, and
with the
yeah,
homeschooling.
yeah, and you answered me with a question, which we'll get to, but I wanted to ask you if you agreed or disagreed with this, just in general, with this, because so with those people that abuse their kids, so now because of that, you have some people that are saying that we need to crack down on homeschoolers.
Far as what do you mean?
It says
or?
right here. It says the organization, this particular organization that was doing this stuff. They're saying that they're calling for requiring annual contacts by outside officials and background checks for parents who run homeschools. Basically what they're trying to say is that we need more regulation, more government oversight for homeschoolers because of to prevent this from happening. So what my kind of question was whether you thought that was a good or bad thing, because we kind of figured the theme here we're talking about is liberty versus security. Yeah, because there's other things we'll talk about on that, but I know this was kind of one that I was just wondering what you thought about this right off the bat, that because these two people did this horrible thing, does this mean that we now need to infringe upon the rights of how many other people that do this, just to kind of keep kids safe? And would it help to have more oversight? I got a couple other articles we can look at here that kind of talk about that, and they give their opinions on whether or not, do you blame homeschooling for this, or also would more oversight have made a difference?
I think to blame homeschooling as an entity is not accurate. However, I could see maybe some regulations.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know about background checks because these are their own children.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, if you do want to homeschool your children, maybe you do have to have some kind of accountability to who you are. I don't know that the government needs to infringe on whatever. I honestly I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what would help. It's a tragic situation,
Yeah.
and these poor children, regardless of the situation, could have been in this same, and whether it was homeschooling or not, this can happen.
Yeah.
So as far as the homeschooling aspect goes, I don't think that's necessarily the issue in this case. think it's just something else that's going on at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of California, you do have to like register your house as a private school, which they did.
Okay.
And there's things I know here in Illinois, because I've looked into it because I don't want to homeschool my kids. There isn't a whole lot of requirements for it. They're very hands off, which honestly surprised me.
So how do you feel?
Being I mean, to get a little bit political here, being a Democrat state, it does seem. I did find it surprising that they're very hands off on it. It's there's a minimum. There's certain subjects you have to teach, and then that's basically all there is. As long as you're teaching these subjects, they're fine. Even when issuing a high school diploma for your kids, it's like it's up to you. When you think they're ready, you can do it. Which, I mean, on one hand, I can. Sometimes it's like, yeah, okay. Should there be maybe a little bit more as far as saying, okay, they're ready for a diploma, or they're also again a hands-on approach. I guess it could be, well, if you think your kids are ready and you want to give them the high school diploma and they're not ready and you screwed up their life, it's on you and not us.
I don't know.
I don't know what their thought process behind it was, but it is very much a.
I hope that's not it.
Yeah.
I hope that's not it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm in favor of homeschooling just because I think that us as parents are the ones that have the ultimate rights to our kids, not the government. I mean, even. I mean, I don't even really want to talk about just the fact that there is compulsory education. I mean, I'm sure that's not a bad thing, the fact that we're going to say, you really should educate your kids. But, like I said, I'm just in favor of homeschooling just because I disagree with what public schools, some of the directions they're going, things like that.
The thing about this is, here's the way I see it. As far as, like, if you're in school.
Yeah.
Teachers are trained to notice certain things about children. Do they always notice it? Do they always are they always proactive? No. But there are certain situations where teachers have picked up on stuff that happens in the home.
Yeah.
So maybe there should be some sort of extra regulation to find out who the people are if they want to. But like you said, they registered their home as a private school, and they did exactly what they're supposed to do. So I don't know that regulation could.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's this article here that today's February 8th. This was the 6th when this came out from the Los Angeles Times, and saying that why child abuse like the Turpin family horrors is so hard to prevent or halt. And they go on here to say that I want to find, because it talked about their isolation was partly a function of the homeschooling. And they did this, but it mentioned, I think it was in this one, or maybe it's the other one I want to show you. Yeah, it's this other one here. Hang on. There's another one here from the Sacramento Bee.
Is that the picture of them?
Yeah, that's them. But there's this one here from the Sacramento Bee, actually. I think this is the one. Sorry, I'm scrolling through this here. But one of their kid, like their oldest kid, went to, actually left the house and went to a school, like a college, to get that. So it's just something, like you said, sometimes teachers mention this is a case where they didn't.
Right.
It's they had one of their kids leaving the house and nothing ever happened. They didn't
was it a
pick
high
up
school,
on it.
or what school do you mean that the kid left to go to?
That's what. Let me. Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
A college professor isn't going to be as proactive as. Yeah. I mean, you went to college, you know how they are.
Yeah, right here it says more contact with authorities might have reduced the isolation of the Turpin children, but as sociologist Richard Gellis, I'm assuming it says, an expert in child welfare systems, said it doesn't confront the issue that some people are able to put up a good front. The eldest Turpin son attended community college, earning A's in many classes. So, it was something that people didn't see.
Right. Well, and again, like I was saying, in college, they're not going to pay attention to whether the kid's dressed well or if they're fed. These are adults at that point, so they're not looking for those factors, like say in elementary school or middle school or even a high school at some point.
Because this one here in the the Sacramento Bee, they mentioned this thing like they said blaming homeschooling for this atrocity is like blaming trench coats for the Columbine High School massacre, which it says in effect is what the Denver School Board did because they outlawed, those type of coats. Like that's not the cause, so you're kind of attacking the symptom and not the disease.
I think in that particular case, though, I would imagine that it was just a posture.
Yeah.
Like it was just something they just did it, and not as if they thought it was going to prevent anything. It was more of a statement, something to. I mean, that was beyond crazy, that whole situation.
But it's like I said, it was just one of those things I wanted to start this off to see what your thoughts were, whether you agreed with just that general idea of, well, hey, this happened. Do we need more government oversight? Do we need more,
I don't know.
stuff on
maybe local regulate? I don't know. Ken, honestly, I don't know what would. And the thing about this that blows me away the most is how many other kids are going through this same scenario. Because this isn't an only thing. Like, there's no way only one house is doing this at this particular moment. If there's one, there has to be more. It's just it's a tragic situation.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I'm okay with more to a degree more regulations.
Yeah.
I think I don't know what they actually are now, but.
Yeah, because this one here again, the one in the Sacramento Bee, they're as far as talking about like what's reasonable, what's unreasonable. It says the Turpins registered their home as a private school. They abuse their children in the privacy of their home, therefore let's erode people's privacy and call it reasonable and accountability is what some people are saying. And an attorney for the Homeschool Association of California said she's saying it's an outrageous suggestion, one that amounts to suspecting all homeschooling parents of being unfit or of being capable of crimes against their children.
What if they find one? What if they save the lives of 10 kids? Is it not worth it? I don't know.
Well, I think that's kind of the greater subject. We're going to look in some of these things here, with this idea of where do we draw the line with freedom versus security, again in general, because you can put so many regulations and laws and controls. I mean, we can look at just things like the Patriot Act and stuff like that, where it was huge invasions of our privacy, but are people saying, well, I'm going to be okay with that because I'm safer now, or they feel safer, whether they are or not.
I mean, that's a very extreme.
It is, but I mean, it's the topic's kind of the same. We're looking at government regulations, getting government bigger and more involved in our lives. Is that the good thing? Is it the bad thing?
Bigger government, though, it would just have to be, a group that's already there. Like, I don't know. I guess who would take over that?
Well, that's the thing too. Right. If you're looking at any state that does this stuff, especially one that has as many people as California, they have the money to pay for that, for people to go through and do all these inspections. I mean, it's not the most important thing you want to think of when you're dealing with humans, but nothing's free. Someone's got to pay for it, right. So you'd have to figure that out.
Well, maybe it could be part of whatever because they have to pay some kind of fee, I would imagine, to homeschool their children.
I don't know. You don't have to in Illinois.
So they just register? It's a free
you just basically have to register it as again, because of the compulsory education laws. You have to do that basically to say, yes, my kids are going to school. They're just not going to the public school. But they are being educated. So
it's not like a fee that you have to.
I don't believe so.
I mean, maybe there should be maybe $100 fee. I don't know for all the people who don't.
Yeah, but with the whole, we do have to pay for public schools now, but you weren't really supposed to have to because that's what your tax dollars went for.
Well,
because government schools, and I think now with budgets and things like that, now you have to pay for it and things like that. Private schools, obviously, those you should have to pay for because they're a private business. But they this one here, they were going on to talk about, would it be rude to, because again, these suggestions, they said are outrageous because it's one that amounts to suspecting all homeschooling parents of being unfit.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then they said, would it be rude to note that parents of public schools also beat, starve, and molest their children? So if you're gonna, they make a good point. If you're gonna say, okay, all the homeschool kids, we're gonna go in your house and make sure you're doing everything.
I see that
Should we
argument.
should we be doing that to every kid that's in the public school too? Oh, we're gonna send someone to your house. We want to make sure.
This is where I was speaking of earlier when I said that some teachers are trained to spot things like that.
Yeah.
Like as a teacher, she was saying how DCFS, she's sworn to report stuff.
Yeah, there's mandated reporters.
Yeah, she absolutely has to. So I think there is a difference between whether you're in. I'm not saying they always catch it. They're people. They're human.
Yeah.
So they're not going to catch everything. I think there are inherently more, by proxy, more regulations because kids come to a school on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And they are more likely to be spotted.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would be necessary. I think if there were an issue, then it should be mandatory that they are checked out.
Yeah.
However,
so
I understand the right wing not wanting a bigger government. I get that.
Yeah.
Not that a bigger government is better. I just mean less control, right?
Yeah. So then when I asked you then what you thought about this, you responded with a question yourself and said, well, what about this? So I don't know if you remember what you were talking about. Because it was, I guess right after this happened there was another school shooting.
Oh, the school shooting, yes.
In Kentucky.
Right.
Because this will be something where I'm pretty sure we will kind of get our opposite opinions will probably be highlighted.
You might be surprised on this.
Maybe.
You might be surprised.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't remember the exact word of the question, but I do remember they asked Sarah Huckabee Sanders in the press conference, what is the government doing to prevent these type of school shootings?
Yeah.
Or to, what are they doing? It was Kentucky, I believe it was, where the school shooting was.
Yeah.
And granted, only 2 children died. However, 2 children died.
It's too many.
Yes, very much too many. And I don't know the whole circumstance behind the shooting. I don't know if the student was being bullied, which is a ridiculous problem in the United States. I think they kind of bombarded her with the question, and I don't normally care what kind of questions she has to answer because I don't agree with her job, but who she, you get what I'm saying. I don't really care, but I actually felt like they actually hit her with an unreasonable question.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that there is anything the office of president can do.
Yeah.
To legitimately stop a school shooting. I don't think there is.
Yeah.
And I don't know on a government level what kind of regulations. I'm not an advocate of more gun regulations.
Yeah.
Other than maybe stricter background checks.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't have I'm not an advocate for taking people's guns away. I don't have an issue with it at all. It doesn't bother me one way or another. Do I think there are unnecessary guns out there? Probably, but is that my call? Not really.
Yeah.
So
Because the one question that I've never heard answered when things like that happen and they start calling for more gun control and all this stuff is nobody has that I've heard nobody has put forward a proposal, a bill, a law that would actually stop criminals from doing something that's already illegal while protecting the rights of law-abiding citizens.
I think the only way that and I'm not an advocate of this. Before I go any further, I want to say this. I'm not an advocate of this. I think the only way you could stop gun violence is to eliminate the entire world of guns, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So other than that, there are no real solutions. I don't think.
Yeah.
So guns are going to be accessible. I saw a documentary where they hand make guns on their own in Central America somewhere, and they're called ghost guns or something like that. I can't remember exactly what they're called, but they're not even legitimate guns. They're just shipped here in pieces and assembled. So it's not going to stop.
Well, in my whole point coming from the when I'm talking about this with someone from the Christian worldview, if you will, is that it's a heart issue. It's not the weapon issue. People murdered people before there were guns.
Yes.
I know that it makes it easier to kill more people at one time. I get that. I'm not blind to that. But still, it's right after like the Sandy Hook thing happened. there's a guy in China. I mean, no one was killed, fortunately,
With a
from
knife.
it. But yeah, a guy went into a classroom with a sword and injured 20 kids. So it's like, you take away the guns, we'll find another weapon to,
Right.
to murder people
will
with
murder
because
people.
because
It will
that's
happen.
it's the heart of the issue is the heart. I mean, that's where we run into these things,
Now-
and that's where you see government trying to say, when knee jerk reactions when stuff like this happens, and we need to outlaw this, we need to outlaw this. Well, and again, even with what these people did was already illegal.
Right.
How can you make it more illegal?
Right.
Can you do something again, like you said, for stiffer penalties?
People,
po-
that
possibly.
do these things aren't concerned of the
Yeah.
consequences at all anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time this kid goes to that school, he probably planned on dying.
Yeah.
Like that, there are no
Yeah.
other consequences at that point.
Yeah.
The consequences are not relevant
Yeah.
unless they don't kill him, and in this case, they didn't.
Yeah.
He's being charged as an adult. He will go to prison for probably forever.
Yeah.
But in most instances, the penalties are not at all considered by these people.
Yeah.
So, and even even like the streets, like when I saw a documentary on violence in Chicago because it's outrageous.
Yeah.
So I was curious, and they said, and I understand to a point where the people who live there in the inner city of Chicago, how they feel, because they say they'd rather be caught by the police and go to prison for having a gun than get caught without one by someone who wants to kill them.
Yeah.
And if you have to live, I don't have to live like that, so I don't know how that feels.
Yeah.
I can only imagine it sucks.
Yeah.
Like yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I was going to say. I've never been a victim of gun violence.
Yeah.
Or no one in my family has. And so it's hard for me to speak from their perspective of people who lost their 8-year-old child.
Exactly.
To a gun.
Yeah.
So it's hard. I don't have that.
It has to change your perspective to some degree.
Right. So maybe if he was shot and killed, I would have a different, more passionate view of gun violence.
Yeah.
Or and not that I don't have a view of it anyway, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It would be more. Maybe I would be more of a get rid of those damn guns advocate.
Yeah.
Which.
Yeah,
Not that it would change.
Yeah, and I know we're known to go on rabbit trails, and I don't necessarily want to go on this one yet.
Right.
Hopefully, we do this more often. But and because one of the things they said here, and I couldn't help but think in this, and again, because I know this is one where we disagree on it, because it said the parents here, David and Louise Turpin, now face a long list of felony charges, including torture, child abuse, false imprisonment, and abuse of adult dependents. It says here, and this is again that Sacramento Bee article, it says, if justice exists, they will never breathe free air again. I would have, if I were writing that sentence, I would have said, if justice exists, they will never breathe again. I would have taken the free air out because of
So now I see where you're going with that
of what I
concept.
think with when we're talking about, like, is the only thing we can do is the consequences.
Right.
And again, I know this is something that at a later time maybe we'll get into.
Yeah, we can do a whole 2 or 3 hours on
Yeah,
this one.
because that would see, okay, when I see something this horrific, I would say that justice demands if you have such a low view of other people's lives, I would say you've forfeited your own. So why should we have to put up with you? But again, is that? But even to that is something that extreme. And again, I know even the answer to that is going to be determined by what you think about that. Going to help with the elimination of some of these other crimes, just instead of saying we're just going to do these things to try to make guns more or less accessible or things like that. Can we say, listen, if you commit a crime, and I'm not necessarily saying automatically right now just death penalty, but can it be if you commit a crime with a gun? Is it like? And I think there are laws in this already that kind of say if you do, if you're doing this, that the penalties are already more
Absolutely.
extreme.
Illinois has very, very strong gun penalties.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe that because of how much gun violence there is in the Chicago area, in Rockford even, but there are stiff penalties for a gun. I mean, I can't regurgitate this stuff right now, but I know that Illinois has one of the stiffer penalties
Yeah.
systems for gun violence
But
crimes committed
yeah.
with guns.
But again, you going back to what you're saying, if you're in that
That's-
situation,
right.
which neither one of us can identify
Right,
with,
exactly.
do you say if it doesn't matter?
Right, it
You know,
doesn't. I mean, I can't imagine walking to school or walking to the store in a war zone, because
Yeah.
that's essentially what's going on in Chicago. Like, I visited Chicago last weekend, and when you're driving into Chicago, and you just look off to it's such a beautiful city.
Yeah.
It's one of the most beautiful cities. Probably the most beautiful city as far as I'm concerned. But when you drive in and you look at it, and you just look off to the side in either direction when you're coming in on going towards the lake, and you just look off and it's like people are getting shot at right now, and it's something that we don't see, but it's happening. It's it's happening right now. Someone's probably going to get shot and killed tonight somewhere in that. It's just it's crazy to think about.
Oh, absolutely, and it's one of those things that again, from my perspective, I find kind of frustrating, because when school shootings, things like this happen, mass shootings, and all the knee-jerk reactions and all this uproar, and we got to stop this and we got to stop this, and like you said, this same kind of stuff happens at least every weekend in Chicago, if not every night. Where's the outrage? Where's the uproar?
I think we're at around. The last I saw, they were in the 700s for shooting deaths. That's not how many shootings people have been shot. That's the deaths from gun related, and we're talking just in the confines of the city, because they don't count. I actually read this. They do not even count like the ones that happen in like state police jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So like if it happens on the interstate, like I'm seriously, this is crazy. They don't even count those as far as the murder rate in Chicago, in the city. Yeah. So if they're at 700, it's probably more like 900.
Yeah. Is that just this year so far?
So far, yes. Yeah, last year I think was one of the worst. And I think
and we're on. This is only February 8th.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Are you talking about all?
I was talking about 2017.
Okay, so you're talking about. Yes, okay, I was gonna say I didn't think it was that bad.
No. That was.
So all of 2017.
2017.
Okay.
Yeah. When I had seen it, it was crazy how many people had already been shot. But yeah. I'm sorry. That's.
Okay. Yeah, I knew it was bad. I didn't think it was that bad.
No, it's not. I mean, it's bad, but it's not quite that. I would bet you would probably be surprised at how many there already are, though.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it over the years that we've been alive too. We've seen that those numbers increase. Coming out west this way. I mean, Rockford and even now Freeport. It's starting to. Things that never happened before are happening here.
I can tone it or like attribute it to probably gentrification, because they're taking a lot of the the areas in Chicago that were probably pretty violent, but they're turning them into hipster areas, and they're knocking down housing projects. And I'm not making this about black, white, green, because there are people of all races that do this, but a lot of housing projects get knocked down. Where are those people going to move? They're going to move to their family in Rockford. And it spreads out this way. And I'm not saying any race is involved. I just mean in general, the high crime areas are being changed in Chicago. And I don't know if they did that to try to curb the crime. Like, is the crime just going to magically disappear? Or I don't know.
If we change this area, will it drive the criminals out, and then we just don't care where they go?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's,
we know they're
not here anymore.
We know they're going to go somewhere. They're just not here. Right. We don't care.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Rockford. I've because Rockford's so close, and I have family there. I have seen the increase. I know with social media we see things differently and easily and more quickly than we did before. However, it's definitely worse than it ever was.
Yeah.
It's even Freeport. I don't remember. I mean, every now and again when I was a kid, you'd hear something crazy happen where someone got murdered, but there were no shootings. There, not on a large scale. And Freeport's had a couple shootings already this year.
Yeah.
And it's Freeport, 26,000 people. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I came from living in a smaller town.
Right.
And although even that's not unheard of. I was it 8th grade? I want to say that I actually had a classmate of ours killed another one of our classmates. Now the one that again, whether it has anything to do with it or not, but the guy that committed the crime was, even though he was in 8th grade, he was old enough, I think, to be a junior or something. But it was, and it was with a gun. It was something where it was a friend of his. They got arguing about something, and he ended up shooting him point blank range in the face with a shotgun.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, for a small town, like Pecatonica, this was like it was unheard of. I don't, no, I think it's still pretty good, even though they're getting bigger. That's that little town's getting bigger.
Right.
And kind of seems like everything, coming out west here is the smaller towns are getting bigger, and I don't know. And part of it is probably because people are wanting to get out of the bigger towns because the smaller towns are better, and so eventually even those they're gonna get hit with the same stuff that these are because they do that. But I don't know. I was trying to think here to kind of keep on the theme though we were looking at. I mean I haven't I haven't read too much to keep up on things, but just trying to think too. Anything that the government has, we'll kind of look and see what's in the news headlines right now. See if there's anything kind of on the same line here, as far as what the government controls versus kind of our freedoms. I mean, we could get into even things that aren't necessarily government related, just privacy in general.
Let me ask you a question then. You say the word freedom, okay? Yeah. And I don't know. That's kind of it's a broader word than just the letters it's made up of.
Yeah.
Because I understand, sort of. But what freedoms, like, are you specifically talking about with the homeschooling thing? What do you think would be taken away from people if they had a few more regulations on making sure they were fit to take to homeschool or something? Well, I know you. I would never argue in a half a second whether you're fit enough to take your children and teach them. I know better than that. Not everyone can. Yeah. Not everyone. So
that's a shame.
I won't argue with you. I won't argue with that. I won't.
I was just talking with somebody the other day about cloning, the cloning and stuff, and it's like sometimes it's like maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing if they cloned me.
Exactly. Well, and that's what
I guess
you are not everyone,
yeah,
and everyone is not.
Yeah,
it doesn't have the moral compass you have, or whatever. It's not even that. It's why not have a little bit extra step you have to go through if there was a possibility it could prevent something like that.
Yeah, I guess where I could take that in a broader sense though is, as far as government and things like that, is government infringing upon my rights as a parent to raise my children the way I see fit.
Okay. Is it infringing though? Is it telling you can't do this, or is it saying, hey, we don't care if you do this, but we need you to do this?
I would say it inevitably would lead to that, would be my argument, even though if at first... let me just finish though. If at first they were to say, we're just going to come in to make sure that your kids are being...
I'm not even saying
are being safe.
I'm not even saying that.
Yeah.
I'm saying...
But, I mean, this is kind of what people are saying, though.
Right.
And that was kind of the premise of my question, is like, do you agree with this? That okay, now we think that now the right thing to do would be the government to send an agent of the government into your home to see what you're doing with your children. Even if they started off, and I think history would play this out, even if they started off with, we're just going to come in there and make sure your children are safe and that they are being educated, that would over time morph into, we need to make sure you're educating your children according to the standards that the state has set, which is one of the reasons why I want to homeschool my kids, because I don't agree with what they're trying to teach my kids.
See, I personally don't think that it would ever get to that point. I think, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and this goes to the whole, you're going to take my guns away thing, and if you do, I'm going to shoot you. You know what I mean? I get it. I understand that that side. I understand that, you know, I don't think it would get to that point. Speaking of which, did you see that DCFS worker in Dixon died? Did you hear about that?
I didn't.
To the house. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't think I do.
She went to a house to do to pick up a child from a father, and yeah, look it up. The DCFS lady, she died. He beat her. This was a month or so ago, and he beat the crap out of this woman, and she actually died. Yeah, this right there, the DCFS worker. Yeah. It was last year. I don't know exactly when, so it was months ago.
Oh, let's see. Illinois Department of Children, trying to keep from dead air. Right. Illinois Department of Children and Family Services employee beaten last fall while she tried to take a child into protective custody has died. Pamela Knight, she was attacked September 29th during a... So let's say she was beaten while trying to take a 2-year-old boy into protective custody in Western Illinois. He pled not guilty to attempted first-degree murder. Anyway, if I did hear about it...
He's in Freeport. Interesting.
Okay. If I did hear about it, I don't remember.
Right. So this is again, this is kind of on the same, not exactly the same, but this is someone trying to protect a child.
Yeah.
And,
well,
there are reasons people do this work.
I don't oppose DCFS in general. We know someone. We're not going to mention their name on this, but we know someone who does work for DCFS, and have had conversations with them about some of these things that even regulations and stuff that they've put in there, and sometimes I do have to wonder, what are they really doing? Because there have been, when I've heard stories of like kids being taken away because the parent, it was raining, they pulled off up to the convenience store and just didn't even go inside the store, just to the newspaper machine to get something, left their kids in the car, and comes back and they get arrested for that, and yet there's people that we've known that have put their children in situations where they maybe the best thing would be for DCFS to get involved, and when it's been brought up, it's like, well, there's nothing we can do. And, well, then what are you doing if you're not protecting it? I don't know enough about this. I'm not obviously what he did was wrong, no matter what the reason why they were there.
Exactly, and there are people that are actually victim shaming to a degree and saying that, well, she did it wrong. She should have taken a police officer with her. Yeah. Maybe she should have. This dude beat her to death. Yeah. I mean, she literally died October, November, December, 5 months later.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't, not knowing why she was sent there in the first place, even if it was an unjust reason. I mean, especially if it was an unjust reason why they came in and to do that, it's wrong to do it. I mean, would I be upset if someone came in and started taking my kids away and I didn't know why? Yes, but if I beat someone to death, then obviously there are consequences, right. and
you make that choice.
And I'm,
as a father, I can see. Did you see that doctor from the U.S. Olympic team tried to attack
one of the fathers.
The father tried to attack the doctor.
Yeah, was asking the judge for
5 minutes.
Which obviously, again, we can get into this again. That other one, I would say that justice for him for those horrible things he did would mean that he doesn't get to sit in jail for 170 years. It's, you've done horrible things. Anyway, but to have the father do that is not justice.
No,
that's vengeance.
It is. Vengeance.
But to have the state sanction saying that the punishment. Yeah. Again, we'll get next episode maybe.
Dude, if we do
a second episode, we'll do it on. We'll talk about that. Just to kind of keep you hooked into doing this with me. But yeah, it would have been wrong. Obviously, the judge couldn't do that. It would be wrong.
The judge can't do that.
Yeah, thankfully. That's not the right kind of justice.
Would it have been cool?
Now,
would I have wanted that?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. Oh, I probably would.
It's good that
I would.
can't.
I would want to. You know, I would be glad. Ultimately, I would be glad that they didn't let me.
Right.
Although I would want
After
to.
a while, right.
But it's. And I know there's a lot of, when I read comments on that, there's a lot of people saying, and it may happen, and I mean, I would hope that and I hope that people wouldn't, like the guards and stuff like that, wouldn't let it happen, because again, that's not right. But even in prisons with the criminal element there, the people that molest women and children aren't thought well of,
right.
and sometimes things get taken care of.
Right.
You know, so will he, you know, serve out the rest of his natural life in prison? Chances are maybe not. Again, I'm not hoping for that. I'm not wanting that. Right. But, you know, I again, if his life were to be ended, I would want it to be done in a lawful in a lawful manner. Right. You know.
And, you know my feeling on this.
Yeah.
Like you said,
yeah.
we're not gonna go there. So,
yeah.
Because
But going back a little bit, yeah, I would, and again, I would almost say, how can you not see that if government were to be given a little bit of a you know, foothold in the door of my family and what they were doing, that they wouldn't eventually shove their way in and say, okay, now we're going to make sure that not only that you're teaching. I mean, like they would tell me that I have to teach my kids right now in Illinois. One of the things they would have to tell me I'd have to teach my kids is the subject of science. Okay, they're not telling me that. And again, since being a Christian and coming from this, they are not telling me that I have to teach evolution as fact like they are teaching my kids in the public school. I can teach them science from a biblical creationist worldview in my home right now. I can do that. If you gave them a little bit more, you know, coming into my house and saying, okay, not only just are you teaching, but what are you teaching? I mean, eventually it would get there, just because if for no other reason than just even if the person that was there was observing me, they would see that, oh, you're teaching your kids this, we don't like, and it would become a thing.
I understand what you're saying as a concept. I personally don't think it would get to that point, only because what I would think would be fair would be just some sort of, I'm not even saying a family visit. Yeah. I'm not saying, you know, come to your house, see how you're teaching your children. I think that's too much. If they're going to give you the ability to teach your children, you should be able to teach them what you want to a degree. I think there are certain things that should the Constitution, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are things that should be taught.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I just think maybe trying to find out who these people are, and again, who knows? I don't know if it would work. Because people can lie, they can, like, it's one of the things I said, say they put on a good front. Yeah. So who knows? I'm not saying it would help, but if it saved 2 kids from going through this, what those kids in California went through, is it not worthy?
But how would you do that though? Other than a home visit. Other than a home visit,
well,
how would you know?
Maybe if they do have they done digging into these people's background at all, or they just clean people that never did anything wrong, or
Again, I'm sure they're working on that now.
I'm right. You know. That would be something maybe they can take away from this case and say, hey, maybe if we'd have done this.
But again, since you're dealing with your own kids and stuff, it's like, do I need to have a background check?
No, and again, that's another thing. Where do you draw? Where do you draw the line? Because they are your kids. Yeah. If you're allowed to have kids with a bad background, you should be able to have the same freedoms as far as teaching them as someone else would. So I get it. I'm not saying...
I mean, now there are... And again, I don't know.
Maybe they have to have a high school diploma or
there are states that do that, right. And I don't know if that would stop anything or not, or if it would hinder. Again, I'm not saying it's the answer or not, and I haven't really thought enough in it to say whether I agree or disagree with it or not. But there are states that actually say that if you're going to homeschool your kids, you have to have a teaching certificate.
I mean, that might be a little bit of a stretch because I know I've never really.
I think someone I knew that had homeschooled their kids, and I think he said it was Tennessee he used to live in, and he was telling me like in that state, I think someone had to have a teaching certificate, and you also had to like submit test scores and things like that to the state, again, to kind of like prove that we're educating our kids.
Right.
And again,
do you disagree with that?
I haven't really thought too much about that. Again, I think I would think it would matter as long as they said, okay, we want you to teach this subject, but the details of it, if they're like, we don't care.
Okay, now
and even well, and let's take the science aspect about it. Math.
Yes.
My kids are doing this.
Teach one math.
Yeah, my kids are doing this Common Core stuff, and they come home and they ask for help, and I'm like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
You would think that math is math, and it's constant, and 2 + 2 is 4, and I know that 2 + 2 is 4, and some of these problems I've seen these kids bring home, I'm not sure if it is.
Right. See, my kids are older, and I haven't seen this with my I haven't seen this with her, but I haven't seen her a lot of her homework because she lived with her mom. However, when my kids were going to school, it wasn't like that. It was just regular math. It was simpler.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't understand it. I haven't seen it. I don't know anything about it. So I would say if you get to the same answer, and you do it your way or the way we were taught, I don't see what the big deal.
Well, and that's what I've the things I've done where I've helped my kids, or where I'm not sure if I had, is telling my son one time. I remember it's like there was a thing. It's like, I can tell you how to get the answer, but it's probably not the way you're being taught, and that's part of the standard. Is if they don't get, it's almost like they're and I could and people may correct me on this if I'm wrong, but to me it almost seems like it's more about how you get the answer than the answer itself.
Which is
and we want you to go through this process. And I think some of the proponents of it would say we're trying to teach them like critical thinking skills and things like that.
Maybe kids do lack critical thinking. I've noticed it.
Yeah. So
in some of the environments with people that I work with, there are people that need critical thinking.
I mean, some of the problems that I have seen, it does seem like they're trying to get them more along the way of problem solving skills as opposed to, but if you can still come up with the right answer,
right? I think
even if you don't go with that exact same route, then you shouldn't get penalized for it. But they do,
right?
Yeah,
interesting.
I've
seen people comment on social media about Common Core, but I have no clue.
I saw one in particular I can remember, and it said the problem, and I don't know the exact details, but it did say like estimate the difference between this number and this number. And what the kid wrote down for an answer, what he put down was the exact answer, and the reason why, he said, because this minus this equals this, and he got points off because he was said to estimate, when it was a simple subtraction question, and it's like, well, why do I have to estimate when I can give you the exact answer, You can probably get into, you got to follow directions too and things like that, but still, it was like, why,
why estimate when there is an actual answer?
Yeah.
Right. I think again, that's another thing that boils down to being able to solve problems quickly.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I need around 100.
Yeah.
Because there are times in your life you're like, well, maybe I need about 100.
Yeah.
You don't need 97 or you don't need 104. You need around 100. I get it. I understand in a common part of life where you need around 100. So if I need 40 from over here and 60 from over there, roughly, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong.
Yeah.
There are times when we all estimate to a degree, and
but that's the.
I remember doing estimation in school.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
But that would be my thing is I would want to make sure that if you're going to, as a parent, if you're going to put some more regulations on me, I still want to make sure there's enough of a wall put up to where you still give me the freedom to teach that subject however I want to. I'm teaching my kids.
If you want to teach them how to add in the way you were taught to add, that should be at your discretion.
And even in like free speech, it still would mean, even if like some other parent was teaching their kids, is something that I didn't like it, that's still their right. You know, if we were teaching world history, and I'm only going to bring this up because I was watching a video about the guy in Chicago that's running on the Republican ticket that's a hateful Pritzker? Nazi or whatever.
Jamie Pritzker?
No, he's running for governor. No, this was a guy. It was, he's a Holocaust denier. All this stuff on there, and he's running he's running uncontested on the Republican ticket for like the, in like a district near Chicago. The unfortunate thing is he will get some votes. I'm sure he will lose miserably. Unfortunately, there are some people that are going to be just like him that will vote for him. And the guy's just a hateful, racist, bigot. I watched the video that he was being interviewed on CNN, and it was. But even if, from a world history standpoint, some other parent was teaching their kids that the Holocaust was just a hoax and all that stuff, I mean, I wouldn't like it, but I would have to say
it's their choice.
It's your kids. It's your freedom.
See, and I get that. I do. And my thing about that is there are things that people should know about.
Yeah.
And if I'm being 100% honest, the Holocaust is one of them. It should be. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what she tried to tell him. He was saying it was hogwash. She's like, listen, you can have your own opinions. You can't have your own facts.
Yeah, you can't.
6 million Jews were murdered. The Auschwitz was real.
Bergen-Belsen, they're real. They're still finding stuff. It's not a joke. It's not. I tell you, I don't know if you've seen Schindler's List. Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's been a long time, but yeah, I've seen it.
I've watched it a couple times, and if you take the Liam Neeson part out, that whole part, and you just look at what it was, it's so. I mean, Spielberg is amazing, and that movie is one of. I think it's like they should have to watch that. People should have to watch that movie.
Yeah.
If you can remove the Liam Neeson aspect from the movie, because I'm not saying. I get it that it was a historical thing that happened, but I'm just talking about the way that, not even about, because he was a humanitarian. He saved a lot of people from dying. Yeah. My point is, it looks so real. Like it was just, I don't know.
Well, and even things I've seen that, even they don't show it in the way that movie did. There's one that I watch, it's a few years old now. I don't know if I ever talked to you about it now. Ben Stein hosted. It was a documentary. It was his, and it was called "Expelled: No Intelligence Allowed." And it was how people that don't believe in evolution get kind of blackballed, and their careers are just, if they just question it and they're in the academic world, how it's like their careers are ruined just because they question. They don't have to say that God created the world in 6 24-hour days 6 to 10,000 years ago. They can just say, like, hey, something's wrong with this theory that Darwin put out, and they're done. But part of that, he actually ended up going to one of the concentration camps because part of it was, I think, if I remember right, trying to show that not every person who believes in evolution is a horrible racist, but it does take something like that to develop this idea of races and how people are different, which is what Hitler thought when he was killing all these Jews. So he was there, but even not seeing the images like they tried to portray in Schindler's List, but it was still just going through these rooms and seeing the ovens and stuff like that. It was just that feeling that it gave you that was like, this is horrible.
I can only imagine how it's indescribable. Like I don't know how you, without going there, I don't know how you can, because I know that there has to be a feeling that transcends everything. Like there's no way you can not feel something. If you know anything about the history.
I think there are places that are like that you can. I've been to one where it was like you felt the gravity
of what
happened there. I was. In my job where I traveled, I was at Appomattox Courthouse.
I mean, all places. I mean, in the United States, holy cow!
Yeah, and I was, because I when I had my job where I traveled, there was places I went, and I was usually by myself, and it wasn't too much fun. And this was one place I'm like, I'm glad no one's with me to talk to me and ruin this, because I'm just walking through there looking, and just You could, like I said, you could feel the weight of history of
Yeah.
what happened here,
And
or
that's
what what
because-
ended here.
And that's because you're a thinker. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people who would go there and have no idea what the heck you're
Yeah.
talking about right
Yeah.
now, and they won't feel it. But
Yeah.
you and I are kind of on the same page with that. We
Yeah.
would go there and like, how do you like? I know people that would have no idea. Like, they
Yeah.
just, so,
Yeah.
but no, it's not so.
You
This is-
you and I probably could have went to that place together, walked
And
through
not
that whole
talked.
thing, and not said a word to each other, and at the end been like, "That was awesome."
Yep, exactly. And I agree. Yes, exactly. And those are those are the things that I mean that people
Yeah.
should have to know.
Yeah.
Like, there's no. Well, I don't know if I need to teach my kid about Civil War. No,
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah.
You need to know those things because I don't know how to word it, but like people who history has a repeats its. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, they say if you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat
Right.
it, sort
Exactly.
of thing.
But it's
And, yeah, it's
the Holocaust. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, in the world, or World War II, even the whole thing.
Yeah.
The whole thing. It
Yeah.
should be. Yeah. And especially this. I mean, this. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Like that feeling. I can though. I can
Yeah.
imagine how you felt
Yeah.
being there. I can.
and it's what I would try to do with my kids if I was doing something like that is try to teach them as much of that as they could, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right.
Of it. I mean,
Right, because there are bullet points that
Yeah.
get taught. They're not
Yeah.
the whole depth of the situations, and even like, let's say Vietnam.
Yeah.
They don't talk about a lot of times in school how much of a POS Lyndon Baines Johnson
Yeah.
was. I mean, he's a creep. I mean,
yeah.
but
No, it's
I think the closest I ever got to that feeling that
Yeah.
you had at Appomattox is probably when I was in Ground Zero.
Yeah.
I went. It was March of 2002, so it was like shortly after it happened,
Yeah.
and I had that feeling. It's emotional. It's
Yeah.
it's real. It's tangible. You feel it. It's not just It's
Yeah.
clearly that's not the depth and the scope of World War II and
Yeah.
the Civil War
yeah.
and Appomattox, but it's still one of those things. People. 2,000 people died. Right
Yeah.
there, and it's,
Yeah. And it's kind of the same thing with people that would go there and would, conspiracy theories, things like, this was,
Well,
it's like,
regardless-
don't think, and forget about it. Realize the fact that how many people
Yeah,
lost their lives.
exactly. Whether is it, who
You
cares
know?
who did it?
Yeah.
The gravity of the situation is these people died.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. I mean, there are, with the Civil War, there's a history that goes
Yeah.
along with the people who died, and you know what I mean. It's not. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there is a story to it as
There-
well.
There's
but
a
it's still,
story, and like you said, the story needs to be told and educated. And like I said, I could say sometimes too, some of this stuff isn't being taught in the public
Right,
schools.
exactly.
So let me teach it to my kids.
And that's kind of where I was going with the LBJ
Yeah.
thing. I
Yeah.
mean, if you really do some research on
Yeah.
him, he was.
Well, one of my favorite teachers that I liked
Your dad,
in high school.
Your dad was in Vietnam, correct?
Well, no, not according to the United States Army.
Oh, really?
He said he was there.
Oh, boy.
The Army said he wasn't.
Oh, interesting. I guess we won't touch on that then.
Yeah, I don't.
That's
I don't,
interesting.
Yeah, if the wrong people listen to this, I might.
Yeah.
I might go away.
Right.
So he had told me he was over there before things officially started.
Oh, yeah.
Setting up like radio communication, things like that, and was even given false credentials and told, if you get caught, we don't know you,
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Disavowed.
Yeah, obviously he didn't get caught because I'm here talking about it. But yeah, no. If you were to look in his military record, he was still in Hawaii for those 6 months.
Interesting.
But he doesn't remember being in Hawaii during that time.
Interesting.
So, well, I think this would be a good place to wrap up
Yeah, I agree.
for tonight.